Master Yoda was one of the most venerated Jedi in the Order's history, having been the Grandmaster of the Order for nearly 800 years. Yoda would go on to train many powerful Jedi and alter the events of galactic history. He was powerful in the Force, incredibly wise, and possessed seemingly endless amounts of knowledge. But everyone has to get their start somewhere. Just as Yoda had spent the majority of nearly a millennia-long life training new generations, clearly there had to be a time when Yoda himself was fresh in the ropes of a Jedi and using a training lightsaber. And with that comes the question of who could possibly be the master of Yoda. It is a question that has vexed both our minds and the minds of the Jedi within the Order as well. Yoda has always been seen as the anchoring point of the Jedi. This caused many young Jedi to ask the question, who could have possibly been Yoda's master? Like almost all things in Yoda's past though, this is shrouded in mystery. But today, we seek to uncover the mystery of who trained Yoda in his youth. But just like Yoda, everyone's knowledge must begin somewhere. And for you, that might begin right here. If you enjoy our videos and want to increase your knowledge on the lore from a galaxy far, far away, be sure to force crush that subscribe button and become an acolyte of our archives. Now, let us begin. Yoda's master is an extremely interesting case, and we believe that there were two, and that Yoda was likely trained by multiple people and not just a single master. In canon, Yoda passively references his master on only a couple of occasions. The first time we hear Yoda speak of his master was in 40 BBY, when he swore upon his master's teachings that he would end the fighting between a human tribe and a group of giants on the planet of Vagadar Prime. Yoda would later again reference his own master's teaching when training Luke on Dagobah, telling the young Skywalker an insightful story that his own master had told him. The story had to do with two great Jedi, Kung Fu and Shuang. The nature of this lesson had something to do with the dealing of death, and how Kung Fu learned from the other master to celebrate those who died, since it was a different way of passing and existing within the Force, and was not the end. Learning that death was natural. But beyond these very rare stories, Yoda is very tight-lipped about his Jedi Master in canon and in Legends. In Legends, there are a few Jedi Masters that trained Yoda. One of them comes from something of a legend or a myth within the Jedi, and the other is our own speculation. The very first person we'll talk about is the myth and the legend Nakata del Gormo. According to hearsay, when Yoda was very young, he and a human companion crash-landed on an unknown swamp world. Here, they would receive help and hospitality by a strange being. This being was the species known as a Haesalaran, a serpentine being with 4 arms and a long tail in place of legs, not to be confused with the species the Thespiasians, which are the species of Oporancissus. He would introduce himself as Nakata del Gormo, and after a little while he quickly ascertained that both Yoda and his friend were strong with the Force, deciding then to give them some rudimentary training as Jedi over the next few weeks. Nakata was a strange individual, speaking in an odd backwards dialect and carrying a twisted staff topped with a kyber crystal. He was actually a Jedi Master, one that had decided at some point to become a hermit in order to focus on studying the Force, rather than being a part of a larger order, entering into a self-imposed exile. Eventually, Yoda and his friend would be located by the Republic, as they had received the distress signal from their crashed ship. It isn't said what happened to Yoda's friend after this, but Yoda himself bade their master farewell and went off to Coruscant to officially join the Jedi Order, enlightened by the myth Nakata del Gormo. It is said though that Yoda picked up Nakata's strange way of speaking as a way to honor his very first Jedi Master. If any of these events were true, their dates are completely lost to the Jedi Purge, but Nakata was never heard of or spoken of after this point, and it's very likely that he had decided to leave the Order for a simpler life and desired to pass on in peace. Yet, when fate, or rather, the Force brought Yoda and his friend to Nakata's swamp world, the exiled Jedi Master could not resist training them once he sensed their immense power. If this story is true, it would not only expand a lot about how Yoda and how he acts, but also his choice of exiled world. The Force works in a very strange way. Things and events repeat themselves, they rhyme, or bookend one another. Yoda was perhaps led by the Force to find a swamp world similar to the one where he met his first master, desiring to feel close to the roots of his own Jedi training after many years of being the Grandmaster of the Order. The next candidate we have is the Grandmaster during Yoda's childhood, the Jedi Fay Coven. Returning acolytes to our channel will be familiar with Grandmaster Fay Coven, as she was extremely powerful, insightful, and wise. Coven became Grandmaster after the ending of the Sith Wars, in a time where constant war had made the Jedi Order a shadow of its former self. training Jedi Padawans only for battle and barely anything else. It then became Grandmaster Fay's mission to not only repair the public perception of the Jedi, but also to turn it back around to what it was meant to be. Grandmaster Fay would make many changes to the Jedi during her long career, even authoring a now famous book known as the Jedi Path. The Grandmaster encouraged students to study the Force in the correct way, and helped transition the Jedi of her era from warriors into peacekeepers that they had lost in the era of their wars with the Sith. The Grandmaster herself never even carried a lightsaber in a way to physically promote her ideals of diplomacy and peace. It would be the groundwork that Fay would lay out that would usher in the ideal Jedi Order of the High Republic that would follow many centuries later, with Grandmaster Fay reigning as Jedi Grandmaster in an era of peace and prosperity for the galaxy, and a great time of learning for the Jedi. It is in the very first chapter of the Jedi Path that we get a hint that Grandmaster Coven may have been Yoda's master, and it comes in the form of a quote written in the margins of the page by Yoda himself. "Remember, Master Fay, I do, from when I was a mere youngling. Good it is to hear her voice again through these words." This lines up perfectly to the timetables where Master Coven lived. She served during the war against the Brotherhood of Darkness, and was a Jedi when the Sith were seemingly brought to extinction. She would then promptly become Grand Master in the year 1000 BBY. We know from some quick calculations that Yoda would have been born in the year 896 BBY, which means that Grandmaster Fay would have been nearing the end of her life right when Yoda was beginning his studies as a very young Jedi. If we are going to try to correlate these stories in the story of Nakata and Fay, this would mean that Yoda was a mere child when his ship crashed on the Swamp World. It would be here where he would train under Master Nakata, and we believe that the Jedi Master Nakata went into exile following the grand horrors of the New Sith War. Nakata would have trained the very young Yoda and then sent him on his way to Grandmaster Fay, who was likely a friend, or at least someone he trusted to steer Yoda in the right direction. Yoda would have gone to Fay right as she was aging and on the decline of her heyday, likely giving Yoda special training and preparing him for his life as a Jedi and potential Grandmaster. Now, as to who trained Yoda when he was a Jedi Padawan and beyond, we cannot pin down directly. However, we do believe that Master Fay had a direct hand in Yoda's training. Yoda has a fondness to Master Nakata and Master Fay, deciding to bookend his Jedi career in a similar place to where he started, a swamp, after all of the horrors that he had been through during the Clone Wars, just like his own master had exiled himself years ago. Fay would set him on a path towards peace and understanding the Force in a non-violent way. But if we had to take a guess on who Yoda's master was for the training until he was of course a Jedi Knight, I would speculate that a Wookiee Jedi was his master. This may sound like a shot in the dark, but Yoda consistently shows how fond he is of the Wookiees, and he has a fantastic relationship to Kashyyyk, something one can only receive if a Wookiee accepted by the Kashyyyk tribe has openly endorsed that person. Not to mention, it would explain why Yoda is so connected to nature, and why he is such a fierce fighter. A Wookiee Jedi Master would teach him to find the Force within all living things, primarily trees and plants. Despite Yoda's small stature, the Wookiee Master would likely also teach him to fight ferociously, as unlike Grandmaster Fay, Yoda would draw his lightsaber when necessary, defending everything in favor of the light. Again though, this is quite a leap and is just speculation. But if we had to guess someone who may have trained Yoda in this manner, we do believe it's possible that he was trained by a Wookiee Jedi Master. So my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the potential 2 or 3 masters that trained Grandmaster Yoda? What are your thoughts on how all of them were mysterious, and how Yoda ultimately decided to exile himself just as his first master had? As always, my friends and acolytes, thank you so much for visiting the channel today, and may the Force be with you.